Steven Silver has been a professional working artist, character designer, and teacher in the industry for over 30 years. He's developed intellectual properties for some of the largest media companies in the world. Steven is responsible for the visual character development and design of some of animation's most iconic shows. Some of my favorites including Disney's Kim Possible, Nickelodeon's Danny Phantom, and Disney's Clerks, the animated series, to name a few. Drop us a like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. Coming up, Steven Silver on the Magma podcast. Hello and welcome, everyone. Steven Silver, I want to thank you. This is an honor and a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that intro pretty much speaks to all the reasons why, not to mention all the other things that you've got going on in your life these days that we wanted to get an update on. But I think, before we get into all of that stuff, when I look at your portfolio and I look at your site and the things that you're doing, the Drawing Academy, all I think is, how does this guy get any sleep at all?
I've really just figured out a way just to balance my life. That's what I think, like, this is being an artist is all about, trying to find that balance and for your own mental sanity. And it's something that I think when having kids really almost like changed that. Before I had kids, I was just going 1,000 miles an hour. I was working. I remember when I was working on Danny Phantom and Kim Possible at the same time. I'd be at Nickelodeon all day long. I'd come home and I'd be working on season 4 of Kim Possible. But once the kids came, you realize importance of things, and it sort of like slows you down a bit, and you realize, okay, I got to start setting priorities for my life. And that's what I just started to do, was just really set boundaries and priorities. And I work pretty quickly at times on certain things, and it just has just evolved into a nice, easy, calm balance that I've been able to figure out. And that's what I try to share with a lot of people, the importance of writing things down as much as possible. Put all that stuff down on paper. Let that do all the problem solving for you, so to speak. Get that calendar going and just stick to it. And it can help you balance your life a lot.
I could imagine. I mean, knowing the life of an artist enough, in the production, the pipeline, the workflow, all the stuff that you gotta juggle. Did you find that just living this lifestyle and working as an artist made you a more efficient parent when you got started?
Yeah, I think it really did. I mean, because you're dealing with a lot of pressures and just even stress as an artist. So those things that they come back into, all of a sudden that kid's there's going to be those stressful moments, those things that happen in your life where I think you absolutely do find a balance through that. And it just kind of helps you just get a little bit more even key with everything. Yeah,
that's very cool. I think about, we in the intro, we didn't highlight all of the companies and studios that you've worked with in the past and helped develop some of their IP and some of the characters and design work and things like that. Think places like Disney, DreamWorks, Nickelodeon, you mentioned Hasbro. I mean, the list is pretty long. We actually have it listed in the YouTube description here, but I'm curious to know, so maybe before we get into some of those industry stories, I'd love to know how you got started. What was your introduction into art, and what was your big break?
My real introduction into wanting to be a professional was actually Mad Magazine. When I saw that and saw the humorous illustration, because I found myself just drawing cartoons, and I liked reading comic strips when I was in high school. And I thought that's the area that I wanted to go into. And then I also just loved illustration. Like, one of my heroes was Norman Rockwell. And I thought, wow, to be able to paint and illustrate like this guy someday. And that was my just early sort of like inspiration. And then eventually I started just drawing for my high school newspaper. And that just really, in a high school, I was like a big fish in a small pond, right? I was just people, oh my God, you're so amazing. Yeah, I wasn't really good at all looking back, but you get that 18-year-old, 17-year-old sort of hype into it, and you realize, wow, I could do something with this. Right. And then eventually I just very early on just had a knack for caricature. And I was always making fun of my teachers in high school. So that played a huge part. I got a lot of love from people from that, and realized, hey, this feels kind of natural for me. And then I ended up seeing caricature artists making a living when I went to Las Vegas on a vacation after high school. Wow, these guys are getting paid for making fun of people. This is insane. I want to do this. And that's what I pursued. So I sort of wrapped my head around that and I said, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to start doing this. And I applied for the job to get hired there. And just so happened that Disney, SeaWorld in San Diego, where I was living, they were looking for caricature artists. Someone told me about it. And I think it's so important for everyone out there. And, you know, and it really worked for myself to always keep your ears and eyes open and always just paying attention. Listen to what people are saying and act on certain things instead of going, oh, that's cool. Oh, that would be fun to do someday. It's like, okay, well, actually, let me research this and let me dig into this. And this was before the internet and everything else. And then I ended up getting hired doing caricatures at theme parks. And that's where it really, truly all started for me. That's where my true love and passion for art really started to grow. I started to train myself even more. I had never taken figure drawing classes before, so I signed up to take figure drawing classes. And I was doing that. I was drawing on the weekends all the time. During the week, I was filling up sketchbooks. And that's how it really started for me, this real desire to become an artist and make something, really make this a career. Even though people were saying, you got to go to school, you got to do this, you know, artists are a dime a dozen. This is going to be very hard for you. It's very difficult. But my attitude was like, well, what isn't difficult, Mom, Dad? You guys struggle. These people struggle. Everyone I look at struggling in some facet of their life. So I thought, I'm going to do this and see how far it takes me. And I realized the more I kept just putting myself out there, the more I was just open to change and ideas, and most importantly, showing up. That's when things started to change for me. And I would show up to events. Hey, there's a local cartoonist. They're going to be speaking here. I'm going to show up. And I would show up to things like that. Even at my synagogue, at my temple, there was a very famous comic strip artist who, he wasn't Jewish, but he came just to talk to the congregation. And I was fascinated with what this guy had to say. And then I showed up at this cartoonist event, and there was a storyboard artist from Freakazoid there. I would carry my portfolio everywhere I went, just to show anyone, just to get advice. Here's something. I'd go to conventions, San Diego Comic-Con, with my portfolio. Hey, can you look at my portfolio? What do you think? And try to just get as much advice as possible. And eventually that led to me reaching back out to this Warner Brothers artist, which he brought me up to Warner Brothers, showed my portfolio, and that's how I ended up getting in.
Wow. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen in there, but it sounds like, you know, someone like yourself who I've met briefly before, and I've observed your work. You have this intense passion for this stuff. Like it sounds like it's been that way from the beginning. You saw the need for it, and you pushed forward, and did you have any distractions or any things that were blockers for you to reach this? Or was this just something that you felt you were going to figure out one way or the other?
Yeah, you know, I just felt a calling for it. It was just something I was just always just felt this need. I don't know what it is, other than the fact that when I was 6 years old living in England, I found an artist's sketchbook laying in my backyard, and it was full of portraits and landscapes. And that was the thing that just inspired me. It's almost like, okay, Stephen, this is what you're supposed to do in your life. This is what you're supposed to follow in your life. I don't know how it got there, why it was there, who owned it, but I look back now and go, I found this thing, this treasure. And it was a guide, and it led me. It just led me in the right direction. It was just a feeling. And there's this great philosopher. I can't remember. He's a German philosopher, but he said, just become who you are. And that's like it's almost like know thyself. And right. When you start to just find that, become who you are, know thyself, you start to realize this is innate within me. This is something, a calling, something that I have to do, that I have to pursue. And then you stop listening to all these other people, and you stop listening to all these other voices of people telling you where you should go, what you should do, who you should be. You have to discover these things for yourself. And, you know, I watched my parents just work extremely hard and coming. And I had this attitude too. coming from England to America when I was 10 years old, like that was the dream. Coming to America was like, this was a big dream. And it was this pursuit. Like, where you go, you can have opportunity. You may not have this opportunity so much to do these things being in England, you know, not that England's a third world country, but it's still different from America. America, without a doubt, is this great land of opportunity. And just knowing that and always heard that. And so you're coming into America. And so there was also this drive too. And my parents would just instill that. And I saw that dedication in them and realized that if I want to make something out of my life, I got to get super dedicated and go all in, because I want to fall forward. I got nothing to fall back on, especially without having an education.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredibly inspiring, and that kind of motivation, those motivators seem to be the most powerful in the world. The ones that where you don't have, you're not left with options. You don't leave yourself with too many options. And I think it can be reinforced. I can attest to this in my own life and relate to the idea of like when you find something that you just love and you have an ability to do well enough. There are challenges. I'm sure you could probably speak to this where, well, you just kids at school that boost your ego a little bit and maybe make it more challenging for you in the professional field where you think that you're good and you kind of have this stark realization that, oh, I'm not as good as I thought I was. I got to level up. But even that's a good motivator. It's these ideas of something that is challenging to attain, but you set your mind to it, and it's like rocket fuel. And I can very much see the rocket fuel put into practice here in your work. I mean, I go through your portfolio and I just see endless character designs. And obviously you very much, this is something you could do forever. You could do all day, every day, forever, and never run out of ideas.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with art, as far as artists go, we don't ever have to be bored. We could be sitting in an airport, we could be waiting, at the DMV, and we just pull out our sketchbooks and we can observe and we could do something. And I almost suggest this over having your phone. Unfortunately, these days, this is one of the biggest distractions where people are more likely to pull out their phone and start scrolling through social media, as opposed to, well, why don't you use that 30 minutes that you have right now to observe people, sketch people, do something? And it's not just about, a lot of people say, I need to draw more. It's not that you need to, it's like, I want to. And you got to get into that place of want in order to improve. And that's going to just open your eyes more just to observation. And because then you're always in tune and you're always looking and you're paying attention. And then you're always picking up things and you'll learn things and you'll come across different artists, that you just inspire you. And that can help launch into something new. But I'd say just instead of just watching the kids play on the playground all the time, you got to go play. You got to go actually participate and start doing something. So pull that scrolling, those notifications. I turn my notifications off. I don't want to have that constant distraction. And it's the worst thing that can happen for you, especially when you're learning and you're trying to improve. You're going to get to a certain point in your career where you get comfortable and you really know who you are and you're doing what you do. You've been influenced, your inspirations have come in and out you, and you kind of get set in your ways. But in the beginning, especially when you're learning, practicing this, you just got to expose yourself to as much as possible. And the more drawing you do, the faster you're going to get there.
That's very good advice. Where did you develop your abilities? I mean, you're now an educator, and you've been working as an educator on the side while working as a professional for a long time. But how did you get there? Did you have mentors? Did you have anybody who helped guide you, or was this something that you just sort of self-trained?
Yeah, I think it was definitely something natural for me. When I was 18 years old, first doing caricatures, I just had this inclination. I don't know what it was. It's just desire to just always help people. I'm just helping my fellow artists. I'm giving them advice, even though I hadn't even done that many things yet. I just felt like I could control my mind. I could control. I never was one that was anxiety driven. I never had depression. I don't go through all. It's almost like being able to control all of that and just realize that, okay, And then I got real into space and astronomy and philosophy, and just like, oh my God, we're just spinning on this planet at 1,000 miles an hour, go through space. This galaxy's amazing, and realize just how small we are, but how amazing everything is. And realize that, if I just keep this right attitude, and it's not this sort of foo-foo thing like, oh, think positive and positive things will happen. But it's just like, but there's something to that. If you are keeping that mindset of just positivity, you're going to start to realize that not everything's so bad, and that you can figure things out and work things through. And then I was taking, while I was working at Warner Brothers, I was taking a character design class on the side at this, we got free classes through the union. And I was taking this character design class, and the teacher was just like, I don't even know what you're doing here. You need to just be teaching. And so, would you want to teach? And I said, I was scared to at first. No, I don't want to get up in front of people. That's the biggest fear, is public speaking. I don't want to get up in front of people and do that. And he said, you got to try it. So I got up and did that. And I swear, when I did that first class, I was driving home that night, and I called my wife. She said, how did it all go? And I said, I think I know what I want to do the rest of my life. It sort of transitioned me. It was like lightning. There was some energy and something that just happened that was magical, that I was just like, this feels so amazing and so good. And I can't even explain it. And I realized at that point, I wanted to make this my purpose in life, and do this the rest of my life. I was, even though I was always working in the studios, I was always trying to find different ways to teach, and eventually transition somehow just to being an educator, and start to help other people get to where I know that they want to be. So that would be very important for me.
Yeah, it makes me think, just listening to all of that, the idea of you have this humble nature about you, and humble in the sense that, like, you're humbled by the universe, you're humbled by the environment around you. You don't, and I think it's wise. There was a couple of comments. Somebody was commenting on talking about phones, turning off your notifications, making jokes, but it's a challenging thing to do these days. But I understand what you're saying here, in this idea of like disconnecting and being focused on the thing that I end up talking about these things a lot, but this idea of feedback loops, that what you put your energy into something that gives you something back in return, that it works for the positive. It brings something out in you that makes you a better person. And then in turn makes you able to do that thing that you're focusing on even better than you did before.
Yeah.
That is incredibly important, and staying focused and not getting caught up in distractions seems to be an incredibly consistent thing in life. And it's not just about art, it's about anything that you put your mind to.
It's absolutely true. That's what it's all about. It is trying to just get that focus, take control of your mind. And one of my favorite quotes that I love sharing with everyone was from Mark Twain, who said, I've had many problems in my life, many of which have never occurred. Right. So many of these things we create, oh my God, that person's going to say this is going to happen, that could potentially go wrong. And it's all that noise. And then it just stops you in your tracks. And all of a sudden, when you show up, when you talk to that, but wow, it never went down that way. Why did I create all that chaos in my mind? And you realize oftentimes how much control you have, especially if you allow it, just, hey, I'm going to take control. I'm going to be the Jedi. I'm the controller of my fate. I get to decide, and not let that be up to someone else to dictate, which a lot of people are, again, relying on other people to help push them forward and tell them what to do, how to do it. And I think, and a lot of people are unsure what they even want to do in their life, where they want to go. And one of the most important things we can do is just look at ourselves when we were younger, but also, not that you're that young, but what did you love to do when you were 15 years old, 18 years old, something else at a young age? Because oftentimes that carries through, and we tend to abandon that. Maybe we've got just, again, exposed to different ideas as we're getting older. But I think you got to follow that. If you love looking at flowers and drawing flowers, and that's just your thing, and then you all of a sudden realize, oh, I want to get into animation because I think I can make lots of money, and maybe I could be famous, and maybe I could do something. I'm going to start being a CG modeler. Yet you really love the flowers and you love nature and you do that. It's like, well, go back to stick true to that. Maybe there's something there. Maybe you could start creating just prints and paintings and doing something that moves you in that direction that is your calling that you love. And I think that's where we got to dig deep into ourselves to find, once again, just find out who we are. Know
Mhm.
thyself.
Absolutely, and the idea of knowing oneself, we do another stream where we jump in with artists. We just call it Magma Clubhouse. We do it every Wednesday, and we were talking about this last week or this week actually on this idea of knowing yourself, and it's overstated a lot. Maybe it's not overstated. It's stated in the right amounts because it is so incredibly important. It's such a simple statement, but it means so much,
Yeah.
and it's different for each of us. To know oneself is very unique to you, and it means that ultimately what it means, the way I interpret it, is that you need to be more introspective in figuring yourself out in a way that so you can learn your own pitfalls. We all have them. We all have distractions. We all have things that we get focused on that maybe don't give back to us in the ways that we need to, but for some reason we think that we're supposed to or we have to. But those things do not contribute well in our lives. And learning those in sort of creating that catalog or that list helps you kind of self navigate and figure out, well, this isn't good for me, or this is really good for me. I should be doing this more often, and I don't do it enough.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Just again, write these things down, put it on paper. Let the paper have the problems instead of it spinning in your mind 1,000 miles an hour. Let that,
Right.
then you can look at it objective. Okay. What is it that I want to move into? What do I need to get done?
So do you write a lot? Is that something that you carry around with you all the time?
I do. I write a lot. I write a lot. I love, one of my favorite things to do is listen to I'm more fascinated in watching documentaries than I am just movies in general. I'd rather, if I'm going to sit and watch something, again, I definitely have those moments where I want to sit and watch a movie, or I want to binge a show or watch something, but it's not that often. So there's very few. Right now, I'm just watching Last of Us, right? I still need to watch the last episode, but that's something that, okay, I want to watch something like that. I like apocalyptic stuff. But I'm always watching documentaries. I just want to learn something. It's not that the documentaries about artists. I'm looking at documentaries about builders, print, it doesn't matter. It's a real estate. I mean, you name it. Anyone who's innovating or starting or creating something, I'm fascinated with it, just because you can learn something from everyone. And that's the stuff. I always have an open mind to that, I can always take some advice from someone else's story and apply it. Somehow it all intertwines. It's all connected somehow. And having that realization helps me keep pushing forward.
It makes, I think about this when it comes to creators like yourself. People, I see you as a visionary, a person who wants to. You have something to put out into the world, and to be realistic, not all of us, even though we can all have, many of us can have creative abilities and similar abilities, we can put into practice the same things. But what you do when it comes to character design and coming up with original ideas, like pure original ideas, I would imagine that it kind of checks out and makes sense that you're more interested in watching things that you learn something from. If you're watching a fictional story play out, certain things you might be interested in, but more often than not, that's somebody else's vision. Creators tend to look at other people's creations and go, "Oh, it's interesting the way you did that, but I might do it differently."
Right.
So it makes sense. Documentaries and things that feed your brain in the ways that help you continue to do what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love reading books on philosophy when I can find some good books. There's just simple things that they say. Like, there was this philosopher, his name's Wallace Waddles, and something that always stuck in my mind. He said, and it's very simple: don't do tomorrow's work today. And I love that philosophy. So simple. Don't do tomorrow's work today. We get this tendency just to, okay, I'm done with this. I got to keep going. I got to keep going. I got to keep going. And the reality is that's tomorrow's work. Allow yourself to breathe. Allow yourself to slow down a bit. And things like that just make all the difference in the world, just to help you navigate your own daily life.
Right, right. There is a perfect recipe for happiness, and it may be different for each of us, but I would say that that advice is most important in today's day and age,
Yeah.
as we are inundated with so much.
Oh
And
yeah. Slam,
it's
slam.
slammed. I mean, that's, the root of anxiety, particularly in artists. I think it's a natural thing to occur within creative people that use
Yeah.
that part of the brain maybe more than others. And I think part of that is, this need to be seen, this need to be heard, to be validated. And sometimes we attach our identities to our ability to do something. And if we can't do it well, then we don't feel good about ourselves. We
Yeah.
don't feel like we're contributing in the ways that we're supposed to. And there's like an intense pressure. But to your point, it's like, this is what I get for using Windows video editor to make a
Oh.
slideshow. I got your Discord logo in there. Well, you've got a Discord, just so everybody knows. But yeah, I lost my train of thought. But I think that that's incredibly important. And it's challenging these days with technology. And as we introduce more and more things, it's exponential. But I think your advice is still valid into the future, no matter what. This is a constant, whether we like it or not. And I think it's your identity and your personality, your artwork. It speaks to that, because you are. We had a comment in here earlier. I wanted to share. People feeling pumped and positive. They feel the positivity and the passion in your videos and your content, and that is an incredibly important part in making a connection and inspiring others to want to do what you do and learn from the way that you do it.
Yeah, and we're all going to have different voices, right? And we all do have different voices, and we're all got something to say. And I think, but if we just again have that mindset that I'm not exactly where I want to be right now, but I want to get there. And eventually, if I learn the right tools, if I learn the right things, it's just like even what I do. You can get 50 billion, there's 50 million character designers out there. There's a lot of character designers working professionally in the field doing what they do, and just brilliant stuff that's being created. And they all have their own way of doing that drawing. Again, it's like caricature. You could take one face, let's just say Tom Cruise, and get every caricature artist to draw Tom Cruise. They're all going to be different. It looks like Tom Cruise. That's going to have the same sort of message. And that's what happens with your artwork too. When you learn those foundations, you learn how to draw, you just keep that in my, okay, I'm going to keep practicing, even though I'm not where I want to be right now. I know that if I learn my construction, if I learn about observation, if I learn about feeling, if I keep moving forward with this, I'll eventually be able to create my own characters, have my own voice, tell my own stories, and do it in a professional way. Again, it all boils down to, again, that mindset, why it's just so vital, and something that I teach more than I think just so much. And I know it's not being taught in schools, but it's like something that I always just want to get across to people, because this becomes like my purpose. Even like when I'm doing this podcast and doing something like this is another great way for me to share with your audience and more people, just to try to infuse this mindset of, come on, guys, let's go. We can do this. We can do this. Don't let that voice hold you back. Don't go into that dark hole. I know, again, knowing you're not where you need to be or want to be right now. None of us were at a certain point, right? But it's all this constant climb, right? We're always climbing. And as long as you keep going, okay, I got to this level. Well, now I got to this peak. Well, now I want to get to that peak. And, just naturally, you're going to keep doing it. We don't want to stay stagnant.
Right.
Why would you want to be stagnant?
Well, and I think it's a baseline in the human psyche, right? Is that, I mean, isn't Stan Lee's famous catchphrase is Excelsior,
Yeah.
like this idea that you're always moving forward. And it's true. And it's true with technology. It's true with the way that we live our lives. It's true even with the way that we communicate. I mean, I start to, I wrote, for me growing up with the age of the internet, I have a chunk of my life pre-internet. So I played outside, I drew in notepads, I sketched with real pencils and pastels, and I used tools. And then the internet came and digital tools came, and all of a sudden everything, all my art, all my stuff went to digital tech. But the idea of like, being introduced into that environment, it's incredibly interesting to know the difference between those things. And now there's folks coming up. A lot of our users, the Magma user base, is very large and very diverse in age range, and there are kids now that are learning purely on digital tools, and
Yeah.
they're
Oh yeah.
spending their time in this space. But this advice and this stuff is incredibly important. I wonder too, when I think about when you're teaching and you're educating, just the evolution of art. I look at your portfolio and I see a wide range of experimentation with
Yeah.
shape and form, and coming up with new ways to deliver characters. Like me being an 80s baby, I grew up on your artwork and your cartoons. I mean, the Kim Possible and Fairly Odd Parents, and like this style, this genre, it was of a time. How do you feel as this transition has happened with animation and different stylization? How has that changed, and where do you see room for growth or progress in this area?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything evolves, and this is what's just kind of happened with animation. It's just been an evolution, and like I grew up watching He-Man and GI Joe and all those great shows, and the Flintstones and Tom and Jerry, and watching a different sort of cartoon, and then it moved into, as the technology changed, we realized, oh, maybe we need to get a little bit more simpler. Maybe the budgets were changing. Things were once being done in house by animators locally were now being farmed out, and now there was sometimes just a communication thing that was going on. And now today, I feel just even with just all the different programs, when the introduction, when Flash just came about, just doing Flash animation, and now you're not so much animating so much as pulling parts. So all these pieces need to be a lot more graphic, a lot more simple, just to be able to move these parts around. And then you got Toon Boom, Harmony, and working with these programs. And it's always, I think, the evolution, especially in the television side, has always been just to try start eliminating line. We don't need to have so many lines in these drawings to convey the same message. And then really just a whole movement really just started, that came from that. And I think with CG now, and this is not going away. It's the feature films, of course, are really all going in that direction. I'd love to see more 2D, but on the television side, we're still very strong in the 2D realm. Again, there is mostly, the Flash or Toon Boom going on, but it's something where just the evolution, I think it's going to stick like this for a while. I mean, you got the introductory of AI, right, rolling into this, which is going to be another area. It's not going to take over by any means, in my opinion. I think it's just going to be just another outlet, another avenue, another way for people to share their voice, and especially with animation, because now they're starting to do animation using AI technology, and
Right.
it's going to be a different world. But it's not going to cripple this industry. As to me, my opinion is, as long as there's kids on this planet, there's always going to be toys. There's always going to be animation. There's always going to be this form of entertainment. There's always going to be a need for this. There was a time when everyone freaked out about when they used to use illustrators all the time in the early 1900s. Before that, and all of a sudden photography came along, and now they were starting to take pictures of clothing and people, and they didn't need the illustrator anymore. And everyone just at that point freaked out and thought, oh my God, this is it for artists. We're done for. Photography is going to replace us. And then became the birthing of humorous illustration, and humorous illustration came into play to where now you are cartooning things and adding humor where a camera couldn't do that. So there's going to be that's the same sort of thing. This is just going to be another tool. It's not going away. There's going to be a need for artists always.
Yeah, that's a good take. I appreciate you going into that one, because it is an important one these days. It's something that we need to hear from as many voices as possible, because I think, in the way I think about this, I wake up to it more and more as we, each day that we since the introduction of AI, and the really since last November, Chat GPT and all these other things kind of blowing up in conversation. It's very fresh and it's very new. But to your point earlier about how we're constantly climbing and growing. If you think about each form of creation of art, to your point on photography and the analog communities, and the transition into digital, the transition into CG, where, the last 10 years of commentary on what CG is doing to films, people blaming CG for making movies bad.
Right.
It's not that the CG is if anything, the CG has gotten better and better and better, and it's more executed. It's better execution, more efficient. Half the time, you're getting more content, but then you look at the commentary just in the internet chats and in your social groups, that there's a diverse group of opinions on whether or not it's good or not. And my observation on that is that ultimately, as we don't do the same thing for too long. We need something new. We always need something new, but each new thing you introduce just becomes one potential possibility of creation. Like, we all of a sudden in VFX now, we're getting more practical effects. Star Wars is doing more practical sets, practical characters, bringing puppetry back. This idea that, and you can recycle these things. They come back into the mix. They're no longer, it's not just this. If it doesn't stay this forever, we're not doing it ever again, is kind of unrealistic to look at it that way.
Yeah.
And I think that when you look at these tools, if you think about it practically from a human perspective, if we're just using AI to generate everything, there's no feedback loop. What's the point of any of it? We're already having this negative feedback from the content that we're getting, because maybe we're getting too much. Maybe it's too much of a business. There's not as much creativity involved as there was for me. It was when I go back and I think about your shows and the content you've contributed to, it was an incredibly enriching time. Everything seemed amazing. But now I don't feel that way when I watch stuff. And I think a part of it is because it's just oversaturation. So it's like, what's the point if it's just AI? Why
Exactly.
we need to be involved in this process, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. And again, it's like we've been talking about, it's an evolution. We're going to keep moving. You can either decide to either just stay, just stay stuck in the mud, so to speak, and just like, oh man, this is happening. I'm not going to do anything. It's all over. Otherwise, you can have that, again, that mindset and the attitude, like, I'm going to embrace this. I'm going to look into it. I'm going to learn about it. I'm going to educate myself about this and what's going on in this space. And this is where the innovation is going to happen, and new businesses are going to come from this. Granted, yeah, are a lot of jobs just in life, not just artists, a lot of jobs going to be affected by AI. Absolutely. But with that said, I mean, that's been going on for a long time. A lot of different technologies have stirred up and destroyed the markets in many ways. But again, things change, new innovations come. Look what happened during the pandemic. The innovation that happened on so many levels of things that were created that came from that, out of this necessity. And it's almost, I think about during the world wars, just the innovation, World War II, because of that, we came up, radar was invented and sort of came around. The computer was invented and came around out of this necessity for something that was so destructive and so like, oh my God, this is horrible. But this is what we got to just accept and believe and go, okay, we're going to go through these waves. It's not going to be maybe as ideal as we thought, but listen, people love art, and we're surrounded by art, and every product we surround ourselves with, from the microphone I'm talking on was drawn by an artist, from the computer screen, from the furniture we sit on was designed by an artist, the stuff hanging in people's houses, you just got to find your niche. You got to find that thing, again, like who you are, what is it that you love to do, and the human connection. And I think as long as you stay connected to people, and you socialize with people, and you get involved with things, stuff happens.
Right. That's wonderful advice. So in this perspective, in the way that you're through your experiences, a lot of this is what you're bringing to your drawing academy. Can we talk a little bit about what you're doing there?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So this is one thing that for myself, I started during the pandemic. Something that I always wanted to do was have my own online art school. I was always teaching in physical locations. I even had a huge 2,000 square foot academy, which was near Burbank, and I had this school, online school. I was doing all this stuff. I was traveling, doing workshops all over the world, and then all that came to a crashing halt during the pandemic. And I decided, okay, I'm going to want to move into this space of creating my own online platform. And one of the things that was almost like a catalyst to that was, I feel there's so many artists that I know from the older generation who are passed on now, who we can only see their artwork and their process in their books, if they made a book, and it doesn't exist anymore. And I thought, I want to create something. There's so much knowledge I have. How can I put it all out there? Just keep putting it out there. And I realized I'm going to create a school that, instead of watching videos that are just long format videos, I'm going to create just these little miniature 2, 3 to 5 minute videos that are impactful, that give artists an idea of just everything that I've learned from just design, my industry experience, all my little tips and tricks, the things that I do to help me with my artwork. And so I created this school, the Silver Drawing Academy now, and it has over 400 miniature lessons on it. It has a great online community. We meet we do meetups every single week, every Wednesday and on Saturdays, and we all draw together. And I give everyone all the different assignments of what to draw, and just a great way to connect. And my goal is just to help people just improve their skills. So I like, for less than $1 a day, you can just level up your art. You can go to that next level and embrace, and just, you can go onto my website. You can look at the testimonials of all the artists that have come through. And again, my goal is to help everyone succeed. And I'm so proud of a lot of my students who have gone on to work in the animation studios, have started their own businesses. They're creating their own properties. And that's what I'm sort of really just trying to get at, just teaching artists how to draw, how to observe, how to design, are the real main staples of the academy.
That's incredible. What do you, your observations with students, is particularly new students these days, what do you find is their biggest hurdles or challenges to overcome when it comes to designing original characters this way?
Yeah, I think a lot of people we all have ideas. And I think there's a lot of artists, they got good ideas and good intentions. But one of the biggest things that is lacking, and now, nowadays I'm also a recruiter for Disney. So I'm looking at tons of portfolios and trying to get people, bring them into the studio. But the biggest thing that's missing in people's work these days is construction. You sound like construction. What do you mean? That's like kind of simple. It's like the building blocks. It's like a puzzle. But constructing, and it's like it's phenomenal, but that's something that's majorly missing. And the other element that's really missing a lot is feeling and life. And a lot of artists, they may have some good designs, and they're showing the designs, but they're just missing life. They're missing story. Not that every drawing has to have a story. It doesn't, especially for production. When you're doing a character turn and a character lineup, you're just designing the shape language. You're creating what those characters may look like. Eventually, it'll get moved into story elements, but you got to think about the design elements that you're playing with, right? And that's going to either make or break a design. Sometimes if a design has way too much stuff in it, way too chaotic, it ceases to be design. It's just too chaotic. And I think so the feeling and the life and the expressions, that's to me a big part that's missing. And that's what I try to infuse a lot into what I'm teaching, is from that observation. What are we looking at? Why does this person look the way they do? What we just had a session the other day, which was really fun. Again, each week we get together in Zoom community live drawing. And we went over what I was watching the Oscars. And I'm sitting there watching the Oscars, and I'm putting it on, and I was obsessed with the reactions of the people who didn't get picked to win the Oscar, right?
There were some good ones in this Oscars this
year.
Yeah,
but it's this Oscar. You look at all the Oscars, you look at everyone, where every show, every award show where they put cameras on the people, it's all the same stuff. It's just like there was definitely in this one.
What a great resource. I'd never considered that.
And I was watching it, and you look at the faces, and and you see how they react, and you see a lot of them, just a subtle thing like this. You look at a lot of them, in their head is just turn like this, and the Oscar goes to, so there's a mannerism, there's something happening there. And then all of a sudden there'll be a smile, and then the Oscar goes to blah, 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 and they'll be like, shit. And then their head will drop down, and then it'll go back up, and then into an applaud. And there's a feeling there, not just, and those are the things that you want to constantly pay attention to and observe. But I was watching it, I kept going back and watching it again and putting in the slow motion and going, I love watching it. And some people who have figured it out just to be very stoic and not make any reaction, just like stare straight, no smile or anything. That way, if they don't get cold, nothing changes in their face.
Right. Yeah. And I smile when you say that, but it's not to make a joke or to play on, someone's disappointment. But I think to your point, it's, we very rarely get a chance to see unique expressions from people in that particular moment. Oftentimes, people will maybe hold a strong exterior, but then in their private time that may come out. You don't often get a chance to see that in across so many different, many unique human beings in that particular case. That's a wonderful observation. So you're always looking for, so it's almost like as if this particular aspect of learning to observe the world in a way where you can benefit and learn from it is a big part of what you're teaching, not to mention the application.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then you can just bring that. You don't have to be a character designer for the animation industry. That's not what I'm teaching. I'm teaching you how to just design and observe in general. So maybe you want to do your own comics, maybe you are working on your own cartoon. Maybe you're doing comic strips. Maybe, you're creating that graphic novel. Maybe you're doing advertising illustration. You're doing storyboards, right? So how do I bring life? How do I move my characters and give that energy? Again, this is once again going back to what's missing in a lot of people's work is just that. It's just missing that life. So we got to pay attention whenever we're looking at artists in general and looking at their work. Don't just look at their work for a technique necessarily. You got to look and observe an artist's work and break that down just to go, why am I so attracted to that? What is it about that? It could be just a silhouette of someone. It could be that action, that acting. There's a movement. They didn't make things just so even in the design. It wasn't just a mirror. This hand's doing this and this hand's doing this. There's going to be, you're observing these things. And the more you start to understand design is what I'm teaching too. You will start to understand those fundamentals. Now you know what to look for. Without that knowledge, again, it's like with a language. Without having an understanding of a language or how to speak that language, how can I communicate? Well, it's impossible. I can't communicate if I don't understand that language. But if I start to learn the alphabet and I start to learn the nouns and verbs and structure, then now I can speak that language. And that's exactly what we're doing with design. Once you learn these understandings, it could be from balance, negative space, positive space, playing around with just connection, tangents, whatever you may be dealing with on a design format, unity, harmony, whatever that is, you understand that. Now I can start to put it into my language. I don't have to draw like Steven Silver. I don't have to draw like this artist, that artist. I can do my own thing, which is what you're going to want to do. But also, I will say on a production, you got to learn to mimic other people's styles. So that's why the importance of copying other people's styles when you're evolving and growing and learning is so vital, and especially for animation, because say if I got to draw on Scooby-Doo, or I got to draw on SpongeBob, or I'm going to draw on Fairly Odd Parents, or I'm going to draw on Kim Possible, whatever it is, these are all different styles. It's all, again, it's a language. And that's what I'm trying to teach people, is that language, so that they can go off on their own and move into all different areas of art.
That's incredible. That's really good advice. And it unpacks, it makes me think of so many things. I wanted to go back to somebody's calling out, with AI, and particularly, the way that AI images are generated and training and all these things. And I think a lot of that is connected to what you're teaching in your drawing academy and what you're putting out into the world, which is, and I'd love to know what you think about this, but my take would be that, first of all, it's not AI, it's machine learning, and it's learning from existing content. It's learning to replicate existing content. To your point on the human, the artist, the need for the artist to study other people's work, is that and this is just my kind of like interpretation of what you're saying, is that there is a need for the human brain to understand that these other forms exist, and you need to understand them in order to be able to interject your own version of this, because there's
Right.
copying, and there's so many artists. I would include myself as one of these people that has always struggled with
Mm.
original creation, like to
Mm.
be able to put myself in a place where I can just put something down and it's aesthetically pleasing, and it is or is not telling a story, but it fits into like a design standard or a way that maybe brings something new. It's challenging to do
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but this is the part of the process, is you have to train yourself to get
Yeah.
to that place. And it doesn't, I'd say 99.999% of the time, like you're one of those 0.1% people that figured something out. You just could see it. But for the majority of us, we have to learn to get to this place.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I would say, I mean, I had to really learn too, again, and what to your point with almost like the AI, it's that's what you're doing. Again, I don't like the thing that's going on with, that factor of what, people I know is very common on ripping people's stuff. I'm not cool with that at all. But the idea, like you talk about collecting the information, that's what we've always been doing, right? That's what I've always been doing. I've been grabbing from so many artists for so many years and pulling information, trying to break it down and decipher it. And it's just all like building up this muscle memory, and it's getting all stuffed in my brain there. So now I'm pulling, well, I like my, shapes, I love how this artist approached that. I'm going to include that in my artwork. I like this. And then eventually you do it so much, it becomes this big melting pot of just like, stirring it. You're taking all this stuff and now you're stirring it all together. And now you're forging, now you're creating something new. Now I'm pouring it out, all this information, I'm pouring it out on paper. But it only gets that way, again, just through that pure determination, just to keep taking in, pulling in as much information as possible. And we should always keep doing that. And that's when you'll start to find your own voice, and something, it happens like you can, like Bob Ross used to say, happy little mistakes, that painter. It's just like happy little mistakes. And that's what it is. You get these happy little mistakes. And a lot of times that's what happened for me, was I was drawing. Oh, well, that kind of looks kind of good. That's interesting. Let me build upon that a little bit more. Let me see where that takes me. And that's where that evolution sort of happens. It's just through perseverance and persistence is
Right.
what's going to eventually move you into that next realm. That's how I think just people become great. We can, at what they do, we can look at sports, athletes, singers. What is it? Again, documentaries. Why do I watch about sports people, documentaries? Why do I watch about singers? Like last night, who was I just watching last night? I was watching Billie Eilish, just watching about her, just like fascinating. Again, just that evolution, like, wow, she created a whole new genre of music and sound, but again, you hear her experiences and what is it, and it's all trial and error. It's all trial and error. And I think as long as we're open to that and not putting such a constraint on ourselves that we have to be so perfect, we have to be so good. If I post this, it has to be great. And not worrying so much about that and just producing, you'll start to get the results that you want in life.
Right. Yeah. It's incredible advice. And also it just makes me think about, if you look at the trajectory of style and arts just in the animation world, I grew up on watching what were old cartoons. For me is Hanna-Barbera, like 60s and 70s, the transformations from those generations into the 80s and the 90s, and how in a lot of these contributions from you in this particular category, how much just subtle transformations. It isn't that far off from the realm of similarity, but it's from a design perspective, it's absolutely transformed. And you've contributed a lot of these ideas and proven that there's so much room for growth always. It's just a matter of, to your point, I think, is that it's learning to develop the eye to look to find it. Number one, it's like you kind of have to be a treasure hunter, if you will, and like discover be open in the moment when it happens to capture it and go, oh, this is something I should run with. I shouldn't be upset because I didn't apply it specifically to based on somebody else's style. That's where originality really comes from.
Yeah, it really does.
That's incredible. I love this concept, and I think this stuff is incredibly important. And on the topic of sort of the Magma community, and one of the things that I love about Magma, and I'd love to get your take on and how you're utilizing it, but this it seems like as of now in this day and age, with so many things kind of getting thrown into the creative pot, as we were kind of talking about earlier, how it kind of oversaturates or dilutes a lot of the value that we get from these things. It to me, it points to there's a need now more than ever for us to kind of reconnect with each other.
Yeah.
And this
Mhm.
idea of involving yourself and getting more intentional about the time you spend in your art. It's the massive output, I don't think, has had a hugely positive impact on creatives. If anything, there's more creatives out there competing for professional jobs in the professional market.
Yeah.
That makes it a more tumultuous environment to find the joy. And I think on the outside, it can be overwhelming. But the truth is that there's so much room for more. Like there's so much room for more. And a lot of that is one of the things I love about, Magma, and what I observe in the community is that people are connecting with each other in a creative space in a way that people haven't really done before.
Yeah.
I remember what it was like going to college and studying animation and being in the computer lab with all of my friends, in the program, and we would be doing those things together, but we'd be spread across 20 or so Cintiqs in a room.
Yeah.
Now we can jump in a call and be on a canvas and doing this together. Have you found in the education pursuits, like how is Magma affecting you
Oh
guys?
man, I love it. I love Magma for that reason, just this community connection. And I use it all the time, just like with my friends who don't live in LA, they're outside of LA, and just to hang out and just draw it because together. And it's just like, and you don't even, what's fun about it, what I love is sometimes you get on the phone with someone and you're just like, oh man, if I call that person right now, or if I speak to that person, I got to be on the phone with them probably for about 30 minutes, 40 minutes. It's a lot of time, blah, blah. But when we're using Magma, I love going on there and it's just like, hey, dude, you want to jump on Magma? And I send them the invite link and go in there, and we could just throw up some reference and we stick some reference up there, and then we just start drawing. And we don't have to, we can just casually have conversation. We can put music on in the background. Let's look at this face. We're drawing together. We're connecting. And that's like one of my favorite things to because I used to go to the coffee shop all the time with try to find groups. Hey, you want to go sketch? Let's go sketch together. Oh, no, I can't go right now. I can't do this. But that was something where it was important to connect with other artists drawing. And that's why I found with Magma this ability to do that just again with someone across the pond, just all over the planet, that you can connect like this and draw. And I'm I love using my pencil. I'm not really a color guy at all. So I just love to be able to just throw images in there or just move around the canvas and just draw. It's very simple, in that sense. And I like that. But yeah, the community aspect to connect like this is just like, it's a game changer. And that's what I love, I think, to be honest, the most about Magma is this, to be able to connect like that.
That's wonderful. That's incredible. And we're discovering new ways and new engagements that it creates the possibility for, instructor. We run Magma classroom sessions where we can get a bunch of people in a canvas together and talk
Right.
about specific topics. We have our internal artist, Ryan, who does, painting lessons, and every episode we get great results, and you get to see each other's work, on the same canvas, being able to communicate and share the information. And there's more ways to handle it. I mean, there's even people that are doing, office hour usage in Magma. Like companies can use it for various purposes. There's all
Yeah.
these different ways, but I couldn't agree more. It's like it's so much fun. It's kind of, for me, having kind of, I spent a lot of my career transitioning into the 3D world and digital sculpting and character design and all those things. But so I kind of lost a lot of my 2D roots, and I think bad practice on my part, because as I've gotten back into it, it's like an invigorating feeling. It's bringing something back out of me that was there, that's
Yeah.
kind of just been dormant, and it's unlocked some of that feeling.
Yeah, that's what it is. When I was on, it was like a couple weeks ago. I was on with my friend, and he hasn't drawn caricatures in a long time, and I'm still always drawing caricatures. So it's just great just to jump back on and through this image, a few images on there. I'm drawing and his drawing and starting to see what I'm drawing again and going, oh man, I love how you did that. And just recently I've been going on a lot with Thomas Fluhardy, and we jump on because we're going to be doing a workshop together in New York at the end of April. And we've just been going on. We throw images on there, an image, and I'm drawing on the left side, his drawing on the right side, the exact same thing. But again, and another thing that I love about it is just that you can talk on the phone now with it. I don't have to have these other programs. So that's really cool. It's just like, just hit the button and now we're talking, communicating. I don't have to worry about looking at, this other screen or Zoom or anything else on the side and have multiple programs up. That was another just real benefit. But yeah, it's a really fun, innovative thing. Again, the innovation to it is, I love it. And this is, again, what we're talking about, just as even new softwares, new things are coming around, and Magma being one of those, just to introduce and connect people even more. I love that.
Speaking of the events, I mean, everything that you're talking about here is incredibly important for our audience and for people outside of Magma as well. This is the key to the castle. This is the most important thing to have in your creative belt. And it's more of a philosophy than anything else, than it is a practice. The practice can always be learned, but the mental practice, the process of evaluating what you do, is actually more important than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Gets you out of bed in the morning,
right? And with a smile on your face, right? With a lot of potential.
Yeah. And being grateful that you can get up in the morning and go to the bathroom. You know what I'm saying? It's just like that all your facilities are there and everything. These are the things that we got to be so thankful for. And any of us who have gone through any sort of physical pain or just unhealth, not being healthy, you realize how important your health is. And that's not just your physical body health, but it's your mental health too. And to have these things, your mental health, your physical health, man, if that's all you had, that's just such a bonus. And it's just always pay attention to that and be grateful for that and be thankful for that thank God I can get up and turn on my computer and draw today. Thank God I can open up my sketchbook and grab my pencil and my implement with whatever, left hand, right hand, and draw. And again, just being aware of those things can change your mindset and make you realize, okay, I'm stressing about the wrong things in life. I'm paying too much attention to things that aren't, that I can't even change. A lot of the times it's out of my league. There's nothing I can do. Okay, let me focus on what I can do, what I can participate in. And it's having that awareness is such a big deal.
Yeah, that perspective and that advice, I think, is for sure something that we'll continue to push. And I wanted to share on the topic of your events coming up I believe you said it was in April.
Yeah. So just on the top there, if you scroll to the top, oh no, you can scroll down there. Yeah, you can scroll down and you'll see this right below there, the upcoming workshop in April 29th through 30th. So this is a 2-day workshop that myself and the great Thomas Fluhardy are going to be doing a tag team event. So this was drawn together in Magma where we did that. So that was just really awesome. And it's going to be a tag team event, just like what we did on Magma, just going back and forth, discussing design, discussing drawing, observation. And we're going to be giving the attendees just a lot of different drawing exercises. I'm going to share my philosophy. Thomas is going to share his in the same setting. And it's just going to be a really fun event in New York City. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I know that as remote stuff is becoming more commonplace, these in-person workshops become even more valuable for anybody who has a chance to check this out. Couldn't recommend it more. I've seen some of the stuff you've done in the past, which has just been incredibly valuable, even for people who have some of these skills and abilities. It's never too much, right?
No. Yeah.
And also it's silversdrawingacademy.com, which is linked in the YouTube description. Want to make sure that we'll be promoting this event or other events in the future. And Stephen, I want to thank you so much. This conversation is incredibly valuable. And thank you so much for your time and all of your contributions. I wanted to call out Pose book has been something that I've used for years, and I know plenty of people that do. It's an
Yeah.
invaluable resource.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks, Saul and Magma, for having me today. Again, I love being able to share whatever knowledge I can, and just spread the love, spread the word, as much as possible. So I really appreciate this conversation today.
That's truly our pleasure, and you really are a beacon of positive energy and a creative force that has truly affected so many of us in this generation of creatives, and I'm incredibly excited to see what you do next. We'll be promoting new stuff. We've got some of your shapes inside of Magma, so you are very much a part of the Magma team, and looking forward to seeing you next time.
All right, thanks so much.
Cheers. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks everybody for tuning in to the Magma podcast, and we'll catch you next time.
See ya.